Jinx.
Bye.
Buy low, sell high. That's not what you're gonna...
Welcome back to another episode of Cremulent. Today, we're talking about the planet Sel and its various nations, ethnicities, cultures, and invested arts. I definitely recommend that you watch this video before you watch my video where I cover the plot of Elantris and the Emperor's Soul, and I also recommend watching my Cosmere introduction video, as I'm going to be using a lot of the terminology that I used in that video in this video. Now, for my money,
I think for my money, Charizard is probably the best Pokemon because he's got the Fire and Blast.
this is probably like the most fleshed out planet in the Cosmere, other than Roshar. So I'm probably just going to give you a little context to set you up for what the fuck I'm talking about next. I'm putting a little map on screen right now. Now, as you can see, on the southern continent here, on Opalon, the Fjordell Empire has conquered the majority of that shit. Way over to the west, we have Arelon. And then on the northern continent there, we have Teod. And then probably like even north of that you can't see, we have the Rose Empire. And Arelon, Teod, and the Rose Empire have all been able to avoid the Fjordell Empire taking them over. So I'm going to start with those three, and then we'll cover the Fjordell Nation after that. And then after that, we'll cover the invested arts. Sound good? Alright, let's go. Alright, we'll start off with Arelon because this one is important. The capital actually used to be the city of Elantris until it fell to this like magic cataclysm called the Raoden. They follow this religion called Shukorath, which is a religion of love and acceptance, and they worship a god known as the Merciful Domai. Their ethnicity is referred to as Aonic, which is important. It will be important later, I promise. And so after the Raoden, the nation was taken over by the merchant class, and they relocated to the city of Kay, which is the new capital. And they voted in this fucker named King Iadon, who's the father of our main character in the book Raoden. And Iadon ruled for about 10 years between the Raoden and the beginning of the Book of Elantris. And now that Elantris has fallen, then they don't have any like magic homies protecting them anymore. They're like way at risk of the Fjordell Empire coming and taking their ass over. So they got to start making alliances with other nations. And really the only nation they have left to make any sort of alliance with is Teod. Speaking of which, we'll talk about Teod next, since that's what I basically said I would do. They're the only nation on the northern continent of Sel, but unlike the Rose Empire, they actually have regular contact with the nations of Opalon. They also follow Shukorath, just like Arelon. They're also Aonic, just like Arelon. The only really major difference is that they have a strong navy, and that's how they've been able to fight off the Fjordell Empire for as long as they have. They are ruled by a dude named King Eventeo, who has conspired with Iadon to marry Raoden to his daughter, Sarene, so that they can, merge nations and hopefully keep the Fjordell Nation from taking them over. Next, we're going to talk about the Rose Empire. They're definitely the most isolated nation on all of Sel that we're aware of at the moment, and they're located somewhere on the northern continent. Based on the Emperor's Soul, I can't tell if they have a state religion or anything like that, but they are very bureaucratic and rank-based, and they definitely seem to give stock to genetics because they are run by a race of longer-lived individuals known as Grands. And the Emperor himself is a Grand known as the Emperor of 80 Sons, which is just a badass fucking name, honestly. They've assimilated many of the local cultures similar to the Fjordell Nation, and I will just note them really quickly because they do have associated invested arts, but the culture themselves is not super fleshed out. Among the assimilated cultures in question, we have Dzhamar, the swampy homeland of the magic known as Bloodsealing, Maipon, the homeland of the invested art known as Forgery, Muladil, homeland of the athletic strikers, and Ukurgi, the original homeland of the current Emperor of 80 Sons. Now, I know I said earlier that they are isolated from the rest of Sel, and that is mostly true, but they do have contact with a nation called Svorden, which is one of the nations under the Fjordell Empire. Finally, we have Big Papa, the Fjordell Empire. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, Fjordell pretty much controls the entirety of Opalon, which they refer to as Sikla. And this is actually religiously mandated for them, as they follow a religion known as ShuraVF, which believes in the unity of all peoples through one divine nation. And they worship this metal as fuck god known as Jadeth, who slumbers deep beneath the earth on a throne made of stone. Now, as a result of this behavior, they have obviously assimilated quite a few different cultures and nations into their empire, which I will list next. The first of these assimilated cultures I'll talk about is Sporden, and they're distinctive for the fact that they're like the only annexed nation in the entire Fjordell Empire, meaning that they've been able to retain some of their internal autonomy as well as cultural identity, and this is due to the fact that they have extremely advanced science and high-quality education. This is the nation I mentioned as well that has established contact with the Rose Empire. These next few nations I'm just gonna rapid fire because they're honestly like not really important and they're not super distinctive either, but I know you all can see them on the map, so if I don't mention them you'll probably be fucking confused. So first we have Hrathen, which is known for its potion making, nearly incomprehensible dialect, and isolationism. Hrathen, which is known for its incredible chefs, and then Gyant, which is just literally known for nothing as far as I can tell. Next, we have the Jindo nation, which ethnically shares a common ancestor with the Maipon, as well as being an ethnic root for other local cultures. They secretly practice the religion known as Shukeseg, which is actually the root religion for Shukorath and Shudareth. This one is kind of a combination of the two with that like unity as well as the acceptance, and they believe in a god known as Dashu. Next we have Jador, which ethnically is similar to Jindo but culturally very distinct. They are similarly to Hrathen known for their talented chefs, but they're also known for a special type of candy, a special type of blue wine, and a special dueling sword. And they also have a large standing army that is under direct control of Fjordell, so if shit goes down, the Jador are heading to war, baby. And the final nation that I'll mention is the Duladel Republic, which was actually the final nation to fall to Fjordell about 9 years after the magical cataclysm I mentioned earlier, called the Raoden. They actually practiced this secret ancient religion called Jesker, which worships the door, which is actually like the source of magic on the entire planet, essentially. They ethnically are a combination of Jindo and Aonic, and they're extremely talented fencers as well as just super chill, friendly, laid-back homies. Alrighty, I think we finished off all the different like nations and cultures that we need to cover, so we can finally get into the different invested arts. Now, Cell magic is actually region dependent, meaning that the further you go from the place where the magic was invented, the weaker the magic gets. And the main reason for this is because one of the shards that I mentioned in my introduction video, Odium, killed the 2 shards who were living on this planet, which caused their investiture to leak from the spiritual realm, which normally doesn't give a shit where you are, into the cognitive realm, which absolutely gives a shit where you are in the physical realm. And when this investiture spilled out, it mixed, and it became this substance known as the Door, and is a mixture of their 2 powers, which allows for like extremely potent forms of magic. Brandon has said that the invested arts on Cell are very much inspired by programming languages, as they are all symbol-based, and these symbols can be like combined in sequence for different complex effects. The first invested art that I will cover is known as Chay Shan. This is martial arts, basically. It's based on different forms of body movement. It seems to be restricted to individuals of Jindo or Maipon ethnicity, which does include Jador and Duladel. It grants abilities like enhanced strength or boosted spatial awareness, like just minor physical enhancements, although there's probably more stuff you can do with it. And the symbols in question in this particular invested art would be your arm and leg movements. They're basically drawing symbols, and it just grants power based on like the symbol that you draw and the order that you draw the symbols in. Next up, we'll talk about Bloodsealing. This is going to be, of course, another symbol-based magic, although these symbols are going to be drawn in blood. This is the closest thing in the Cosmere so far to necromancy that I've seen. It seems to be restricted to individuals from the Dzhamar region and probably also that ethnicity as well. It allows for some things that we've seen so far, like magically tracking someone or maybe like animating a skeleton for use as a minion. And the effects are determined by where the blood rune is placed, and then also, of course, the complexity of the runes. And one other unique thing about it is that when you apply this rune to an object, it seems to render this object immune to other forms of invested arts. Next up, we'll talk about Forgery, which is one of my personal favorites. I just think it's very clever. It is a magic that uses carved objects known as soul stamps to modify a person or object's history. It does seem to be restricted to people who are born in the Maipon region, but not people who are of Jindo or Maipon ethnicity. This is one of the craziest magics I've ever seen. You can recreate historical works of art or improve the quality of an object, or you could even do something as crazy as changing your own past to give yourself a unique new set of abilities. And I've even seen someone basically create a magic AI. Now, the effects of this magic are just dependent upon the quality, accuracy, and complexity of the soul stamp in question. Next is Dakhor, which is kind of the magic most associated with Fjordell. It is a ritual sacrifice-based magic, and it seems to grant permanent abilities rather than temporary effects. It does seem to be restricted to individuals of Fjordell heritage, and it grants some pretty cool abilities like investiture resistance, teleportation, enhanced strength. It deforms your bones to create symbols, which you can see this deformity like on bare skin, but if you put on like thick, heavy robes, that can hide the deformity. The specifics of the ritual, the amount of human sacrifices, and the bone symbol created determine the power granted, but we don't know like the details of this yet. The final magic that I'll talk about is known as Aondor. Now, this is, once again, surprise, surprise, another symbol-based magic, where you draw these symbols known as aeons in the air to cause various effects. This magic does seem to be restricted to individuals of Aeonic ethnicity, which includes the Dueladel Republic, Teod, and Arelon. Now, you must be an Elantrian to use this magic, and Elantrians are special types of invested individuals who are immortal and just have like enhanced abilities in general, like strength and speed and probably like mental capacity, just, you know, standard magically enhanced individual type shit. Aondor just seems to be capable of like fucking anything, honestly. You can heal people, you can cast illusions, you can shoot people with fucking Iron Man energy blasts, you can summon fire, you can fucking create street lamps, you can teleport. It's insane. And the only restriction seems to be fucking how well you can draw the symbol and like how complicated it is. And the only sort of quirk about it is that these symbols have to be based on the local geography. And the very final thing I'll cover, which isn't an invested art, but still kind of a type of magic, are the Selish Spren. At least that's what I call them. First we have Seons, which are splinters of devotion. They're just little sapient balls of light with an Aeon in the center that can be magically bonded with. The only major ability I've seen them grant is the ability to do like Star Wars hologram calls with homies in other nations. And then they're just like your little magic AI butler or some shit. I don't know, they're kind of cute and sassy. And then there's also the Skaze or Skaze, and they're basically just like evil Seons, and they work for the Fjordell Empire. They're literally dark instead of light, and they're really not well understood in Arelon. Alright, my little Kremlings, thanks for tuning in for another episode of Cremulent. In the next video, we're going to cover the plot of the books Elantris, as well as the Emperor's Soul. So I really hope you were paying attention to this video, because I'm going to pretend like you watched it when making the next one. Goodbye!